Today on NewsWatch, it's deal day. World leaders have reached an agreement on a nuclear deal with Iran. We'll explain the dangers of the plan. Plus,
I'm shocked at the fact that I wasn't even charged. I wasn't even charged, and I'm being told that I have to be silent.
Silenced for their Christian faith. We'll take you to Oregon and hear from the Oregon bakers who refused to make a cake for a gay wedding. And why this pastor gave up everything to bring hope to one of the poorest countries in the world. Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Charlene Aaron. The U.S., 5 other world powers, and Iran signed a historic deal over Iran's nuclear program. As Chris Mitchell reports, the deal will have profound consequences throughout the Middle East.
After weeks of negotiations, the 6 world powers, including all the members of the UN Security Council and Iran, reached an agreement. The deal will leave Iran's nuclear facilities intact and allow it to continue to enrich uranium, a deal that satisfied the Iranians. Iran achieved its most sought-after reward, lifting economic sanctions.
It is an important achievement for all of us. Today could have been the end of hope on this issue, but now we are starting a new chapter of hope.
Yet here in Jerusalem, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu criticized the deal. In a statement, he said, the agreement is an historic mistake for the world.
Our concern, of course, is that the militant Islamic State of Iran is going to receive a sure path to nuclear weapons. Many of the restrictions that were supposed to prevent it from getting there will be lifted. And in addition, Iran will get a jackpot, a cash bonanza of hundreds of billions of dollars, which will enable it to continue to pursue its aggression and terror in the region and in the world.
Now the focus shifts to the U.S. Senate. They have 60 days to review and vote on the deal. The agreement also represents a major shift in U.S. policy, away from its traditional allies like Saudi Arabia and towards Iran. Since Saudi Arabia and many of the Gulf states consider Iran a mortal enemy, it's possible the deal will increase, not lessen, tensions in the region. And Netanyahu alluded to a military option when he said Israel remains committed to preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. While the deal may end one phase of the world's dealing with Iran's nuclear program, another new and potentially more dangerous phase may have begun. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Here in the U.S., Defense Secretary Ash Carter has ordered a 6-month study that will look at formally ending the ban on transgender people serving in the military. Dale Hurd has the story.
Carter says the Pentagon ban on transgendered persons is outdated, and the review would determine if lifting the ban would have any impact on the military's ability to be ready for battle. The Defense Secretary is creating a working group that will begin with the presumption that transgender people should be able to serve. Former Navy pilot Bryn Tannehill left the service before transitioning to another gender.
It was stressful, and it was something that I couldn't talk with anyone about, because if you even breathed a word of it, you didn't know what was going to happen, and you could lose your career that I'd worked so hard for.
But there are key concerns: whether the military should pay for sex change surgeries, where transgender troops would be housed, what uniforms they would wear, which bathrooms they would use, and whether their presence would affect the ability of small units to work well together. Retired Army General Jerry Boykin with the Family Research Council attacked the plan, saying, "Considering the abysmal condition of our military and a decline in readiness, why is this a top priority for the Obama administration?" The Pentagon must answer whether this proposed policy makes our military more capable of performing its mission. The answer is a very clear and resounding no. The announcement comes after reports of already low morale in the military and the exodus of Christian servicemen and women who now see the military as hostile to their faith. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
In Oregon, Christian bakers took a stand for their faith, refusing to take part in a gay wedding. Now they face threats, heavy fines, and the loss of their constitutional rights. Abigail Robertson traveled to Oregon to find out what's the next step for the Klein family.
The trouble for Aaron and Melissa Klein began 2 years ago when a woman came into their bakery asking for a wedding cake.
Usual day, she came in, sat down. I had some cake for her to try. I asked her for the bride and groom's name. She told me it was going to be 2 brides. At that point, I was apologetic. I said, "I'm sorry, we can't do this, and I did not mean to waste your time." And she got up and walked out. That was the extent of the encounter.
A few weeks later, the Kleins faced a civil complaint for failing to provide the couple equal service in a place of public accommodation, a citation equal to a traffic violation in the state.
We were of the mindset that we were fully within our rights. I mean, everybody believes that adage, you know, that we reserve the right to refuse business for, you know, any reason.
The couple originally sought just $400. The price of one of Melissa's custom cakes. But Oregon Labor Commissioner Brad Avakian decided they deserved more, awarding them $135,000 in emotional damages. He then ordered the Kleins to cease and desist from openly professing that they won't serve gay weddings because of their Christian beliefs. Since turning down the lesbian couple, the Kleins have had to close their business and have spent the past 2 years fighting to protect their religious liberty. And now they fight to protect their freedom of speech.
It's First Amendment free speech. You're looking at a government agency telling a private individual what they can and cannot say. This should scare every American.
I'm shocked at the fact that I wasn't even charged. I wasn't even charged, and I'm being told that I have to be silent. And to me, that's like, I don't understand that. That doesn't, I mean, I don't see how somebody can tell me to be quiet. And frankly, I'm not going to be quiet about my faith.
Hans von Spakovsky of the Heritage Foundation says the Kleins could seek legal action against Commissioner Avakian for his clear prejudices in their case.
I actually think they have a potential civil rights case against Avakian. He clearly has acted in a biased, prejudiced manner. He's acted as judge, jury, and executioner in this case, and has acted punitively against them.
Spakovsky also feels the ruling is intended to intimidate other Christians.
I think the churches should be getting behind the Kleins, but I have no doubt that they're not saying anything about this because the clear intent of the state of Oregon and Commissioner Avakian is to intimidate the Christian community. That's why he's imposed this huge punishment on the Kleins. And it's very clear that intimidation is working.
Aaron and Melissa have seen mixed support from Christians in Portland.
Even the churches, no, I'm not saying all of them, but a percentage of the churches said basically they've made this mess, they're on their own.
Professor Michael Gurney from Portland's Multnomah University sees this mixed reaction as generational.
I think for the younger generation, they don't understand why Christians would refuse. For them, it's not that they see this, they would see the act of baking a cake as endorsing. It's a matter of equality. I think we're going to see more and more of this encroachment upon religious liberties. And I think that we have to really be prepared for that.
Despite the hardships and long road ahead, Aaron and Melissa remain confident God will see them through.
For me personally, it has been, I mean, it's weird to say, but an amazing experience. I've learned so much through all this. God has taught me to trust Him.
Abigail Robertson, CBN News, Portland, Oregon.
The son of a Boston police officer has been arrested on terrorism charges. Boston Police Captain Alexander Chickolo alerted authorities that his own son, Alexander Chickolo, had been talking about joining ISIS. Alexander was arrested on July 4th as part of an FBI anti-terrorism operation. The FBI says Alexander was planning to set off bombs at a college campus and at a nearby gay bar. After that, he planned to execute non-Muslim students live via the internet. His father told authorities that Alexander has had a long history of mental illness. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker is the latest Republican to join the race for president. He made the announcement in his home state on Monday. He He joins the race as a top-tier candidate who's already leading some of the polls in Iowa. His main theme will be that of a fiscal conservative reformer who has gotten results in his home state. That's something that CBN's David Brody spoke with him about recently in Iowa.
What I hear Americans want is someone who fights and wins for everyday Americans. Someone, a lot of good people on our side who fight the good fight. There's a lot of people who have won elections before. But right now, I don't see anybody in this race or anybody else thinking about getting in who has fought the good fight on issue after issue after issue, common sense conservative reforms, and won. Not just won elections. In our case, we've won 3 elections in 4 years in a state that hasn't gone Republican since '84. But I also mean, more importantly, win in substance on the issues.
And you can watch and read more about Scott Walker and all the other GOP presidential candidates on David's blog. It's called The Brody File. Just go to cbnnews.com. A Seattle teen whose plane crashed over the weekend has been found alive and well. Saturday afternoon, a plane carrying 16-year-old Autumn Veach and her step-grandparents took off from Montana, heading to Linden, Washington. But the plane never arrived. Late Monday, Autumn was spotted walking along the highway, along Highway 20. A driver spotted her, picked her up, and took her to a nearby store.
She related that she had been in an accident and had spent the last 2 days walking basically down a creek that turned into a larger creek, river, and came across a trailhead, found Highway 20, and then waited for somebody to pick her up.
Wow. Well, Autumn was taken to a hospital and is said to be in stable condition. It's unknown if her step-grandparents survived the crash. Coming up, a Christian pastor being held in an Iranian prison has been released, but it's only temporary. We'll explain why next. A Christian house church leader has been freed from prison in Iran. Pastor Behnam Irani was granted a 15-day temporary release. According to Present Truth Ministries, Irani had to post a $40,000 bond to guarantee his return. Jailed twice, Pastor Behnam has been imprisoned since April 2010. The former Muslim was convicted of committing crimes against Iranian national security. He'll be required to return to prison July 19th after visiting his wife and children for the first time in over 4 years. CBN senior international correspondents George Thomas and Gary Lane spoke about the deal and what Pastor Irani's temporary release from jail means.
Pastor Behnam has been released, given temporary release.
Yes.
What does this mean?
Well, it means for only 2 weeks. He'll have to return to prison on the 19th of July. So he was out around the 4th of July on our Independence Day, and he'll have to go back.
So help me understand this. Why is he's been in there for quite some time?
Yes, he
has.
On
what charges?
Well, the charges have been against Iranian national security. But in reality, what that really means is he was a house church leader and was leading many Muslims to Christ. And the Islamic Republic views that, as you know, George, as a threat against their rule and against the country.
And he's going to go back?
Yeah,
I mean, there's no doubt he's going to go back.
He paid a $40,000 bond that was required for him to assure that he would return to prison.
Okay. Now, my understanding is that there is another pastor set to be released. Yes. What are the details about him?
Farshid Fatih. And Farshid Fatih has been in prison since December 2010. Another house church leader, same type of charges against him. And what the Iranian government is now saying, reportedly, is that he will be freed this December, 2 years ahead of his scheduled release.
Help us sort this out. Do you think either of these two cases are tied to these ongoing nuclear negotiations in Iran?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you always have to look, when you look at the Middle East, you have to look at timing. Not necessarily what people say, but what they actually do. And the timing of this was interesting. When you look at Behnam Irani, he was released on the 4th of July, America's Independence Day. And then shortly after that, the announcement that this other pastor, Farshid Fatih, will be released 2 years earlier. So you have to wonder, is this a sign of goodwill? Has there been pressure put on Iran to do this as a part of the nuclear talks? We don't know for certain, but it could be.
One of the individuals that we have reported on quite frequently here on CBN News is the case of Pastor Saeed Abedini, an American-Iranian pastor. Good news for these other pastors, but not so good news for Pastor Abedini. Any chance he could be released?
There has not been one word about Pastor Saeed Abedini. And I think, George, the reason for that is he is considered the big bargaining chip.
Okay.
So if there's concessions that Iran wants, they said, look, we'll let him go, but you have to give us something. So no one knows for certain if this is part of the nuclear talks, but you can bet they probably are.
And on that subject, do you sense that with a potential deal at hand, that the crackdown on the underground church in Iran will decrease or increase?
You know, the Iranians are master negotiators, and I think this is just a sign of goodwill to get concessions that they're looking for at this point in time. But in the long term, no. It's not going to make a bit of difference. They feel threatened by the Benim Iranis and the Farshid Fatis out there, the house church leaders who are transforming their society by leading people to Christ.
Well, this could be a very, very important week as it relates to the nuclear negotiations in Iran, in Vienna with the United States and other countries. A key week.
Yeah.
Gary, as always, sir, thank you for your insights.
Glad to be here.
Okay.
And for more on the nuclear deal with Iran and Pastor Irani, log on to cbnnews.com. Up next, hope inside of one of the poorest countries in the world. Reach Youth Global shares how they're saving lives next. In many developing nations, children are threatened by poverty, disease, lack of education, and even terrorists. To combat this problem, one pastor is leaving his church and heading halfway around the world. CBN's Angela Zatopek reports.
Growing up in certain parts of the world can be desolate and even dangerous, but you don't see that in the faces of these children. Knowing they have food for the day, a chance at education, or just being loved, a light of hope shines to help brighten their future. But what about countless others who only see darkness? One day, Houston pastor Sal Saberna unexpectedly received a call for help.
I called him right here and told him, you need to quit preaching and come to Africa.
When Lauren called me, I was in the midst of a capital fundraiser. We're trying to raise about $8 million, trying to buy a piece of land, build a building. And I said, dude, I would love to do that, but I'm so busy right now. And he never went away. I finally said, you know what, I think you're right.
The two men have started the organization Reach Youth Global, or RYG.
It's the goal of Reach Youth Global is to fight the lies that can blind our youth by supporting different ministries which can affect their culture today.
Our goal has always been to take the young people of a country, train them and show them a better way, and let them help change their country.
One example can be found right here in Jinja, Uganda.
Welcome to Mashaw Children's Village. Located on the bank of the Nile River, the Hebrew word Mashaw means to draw out. Just as Moses was saved, this village was built to draw children out of desperate situations.
My family before this was not good.
Since so many children come from broken homes, RYG takes care of their needs until they are 18 years old. Then they can hopefully return to their own communities as leaders.
I came to Masha Children's Village. They educated me, they loved me. And I have friends.
RYG's focus is heavily in Africa, with their youth regularly facing persecution from terrorist groups.
The only thing that's really going to stop that isn't so much what Washington does, but what the Kingdom of God does. And we believe that these strategic partners that we have here in Africa can push back that kind of darkness.
I'm currently in the Kibera slums, which is one of the largest slums in Africa that Reach Youth Global is working with. They've set up a feeding center and a school for 350 kids, even though there are 1.5 million residents here.
By starting each day with singing, prayer, and a meal, the Kibera New Hope Center inspires children to fight against the temptation to get into crime and drugs.
We want you to do well in your life. To study hard. And do well for other people. And we want you to become the hope of Kibera, the hope of Kenya, and the hope of Africa.
RYG is constantly looking for new local partners, knowing the impact that can be made by saving just one child.
Recently, the camp in Tanzania, a young man who had been recruited to Al-Shabaab attended the camp because a friend brought him, and there he gave his life to Christ. That is one less potential terrorist that's going to be murdering people and buying into something that is a lie.
Angela Zatopek, CBN News, East Africa.
And thank God for ministries like Youth Global. Stay with us. We'll be right back. CBN's Orphans Promise is helping provide clean drinking water to children in Ukraine. For months now, many children have been living in a war zone in eastern Ukraine without adequate access to water. Working with a local church on the ground, Orphans Promise dug a well to supply them with life-giving water. Teams have also been providing food, clothing, and other relief materials. Orphans Promise is offering continued support to children at risk in the war-torn region, and you can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international. Well, that's it for now on CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. And remember to tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here. You can do that on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day, and God bless.